This is Johnny Bluestar. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience, rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication. Welcome back to Threshold Radio. We're back with Sarah K. Westall, host of Conscious Radio with a special interest and emphasis on business game-changing innovators and their discoveries. Sarah, as a writer of books and films, but also as a songwriter, I'm interested in how you look at the disruption in the music, film, and publishing worlds provided by the internet. I believe that all three of these worlds, particularly in regards to business and distribution, have been irretrievably disrupted. But there's a very interesting article by Gareth Cuddy, the founder of Versa, an ebook distributor and data company, which appeared in Digital Book World, which compares disruption in the book and music industry. The article, entitled Publishing's Digital Disruption, starts off by noting the disruptive events occurring in the music business, which I would like to discuss. Here's what Cuddy says. The music industry thought that disruption was over by 2011 when their sales began to recover somewhat. Despite digital units accounting for 64% of music sales, the consensus was that the market had stabilized and was back to business as usual. Then in 2011, a Swedish startup called Spotify launched in the U.S. After only 4 years in the mainstream, it now has over 15 million subscribers and 60 million active users. The Spotify business model has truly disrupted the music business, with artists now looking at non-traditional ways of generating sales other than records as their stable income. How do you look at the disruption in the music business, say from the last leg of vinyl in the music business until now, Sarah?
Well, digital has completely taken over for the majority of music. And when you look at the young kids, vinyl has had a niche comeback, but for the masses, it's digital because it's easier. It's easier to get hold of. Kids are different than what we grew up with, right? They're on social media all the time, and they have applications. They have little apps. If they hear a little sound, a little clip of music, they play that clip and then they search for where that song came from, and then they know the song, and then they grab that song or, download it or whatever. It's amazing how they look and they retrieve music. It's a different paradigm for them than it is for us. We bought music by the records. They're buying music it's so much more free flowing. And my daughter is amazing. She just loves music. So she's into all this. She has such an eclectic collection of music from all different industries, all different artists of all different things. And it's amazing how she gets her music. And she'll listen to just some clip on a television show, record it, and then find it. And we never had that capability before. And so we've never had a time. I like to look at the positives of this disruption as well. And we've never had a time in history where an average musician can really make a difference and get out there. Yet it's much harder for an established musician to be made as well in some ways, because the music industry doesn't have the power they used to have as they do now, right? And so social media, it's just changed. Social media has so much more power. These kids operate differently. And we don't even really know how it's going to change because they're creating and making their own roads and their own way. They're forming their own culture. And that's what's unique and interesting to watch.
Well, I have a conflict with it because I'm a songwriter myself and I'm starting to get my songs out there. And on the other hand, I like to sing alone, usually. But what I can do when I sing is I just pick out any of the songs that I've known when I'm growing up, and particularly if I want, some singer to, if I want Bob Dylan or David Bowie, bless his soul, to listen to one of his songs, I just pull it up on YouTube and listen to it. And what I do is I go to lyrics. Now, a few years ago, when you went to lyrics, it had been sort of banned. There was, a lot of the times you couldn't find any lyrics. But now you can find all the lyrics and all the songs, and you can sing together while you're reading the lyrics, right?
Yeah.
But what does that do to the business? And then I haven't done this for a year or two, but I'd go to iTunes, and it may have changed, but I'd go to iTunes, the top 100 list, the new songs that were on there, and I'd find the complete song on YouTube. Well, on my little phone, I can just click and go to any of those songs, at least at the time, click on it, and listen to the song. I don't have to watch it. I can just listen to it for free. What does that do to the business?
Well, I think it's cannibalizing it. That's not a good aspect of it. It's cannibalizing how music and art is being propagated through society. I think that, buying songs one-on-one basis through iTunes and things is huge, and that's happening. But and people like to have their own music collection. And so in that way, there's a whole industry there. But as far as YouTube cannibalizing, it'll be interesting to see how that develops. And it's like that with all media right now.
Well, it's the protection of copyright is really weak.
It is.
Here's another amazing thing about music and the internet. The possibility of bringing together creative artists who, under other conditions, may never would have met. Some of my other shows have related how Edgar Ahrens, Patricia Welch, and I met through an English site called Academy, which was a wonderful invention by Thomas and Penny Powers. Edgar is Russian and lived in Moscow at the time, and he contacted me because of my profile, which said I wrote screenplays. It is true he thought I was a producer and wanted to work with him in films, but I wasn't at the time. Still, I listened to some of his musical scores, and I honestly believed I had discovered a Russian John Williams. Anyway, I asked him if we could work together on songs. So he told me that coincidentally there was another American who wanted to work with him, a singer named Patricia Welch, who just happened to live 30 miles from where I lived. All our music was created and developed over the internet and Skype, the actual mixing being largely done in Moscow, with a continual transmission of files and discussions to perfect every aspect of each song. Here's a clip from two of our songs. The first is called Love Never Withers, from an album and hopefully musical we are currently creating called Hadley's Castle.
The whistling wind makes me shiver. Its gray shrieks make me cry. I remember the joyous glee that it stole from my eyes. I remember that day when the wind swept away life's dear comfort and warmth on that bitter autumn day. Maple leaves curl and quiver and flail in the air. The rude act of dying paints wood brown everywhere. But I know harsh enchantment can't turn the love astray, because love never withers. Love never withers. Love never withers away.
The second is called The Palm Springs Lullaby, which was somewhat of an exaggerated distortion and romanticization of what happened when my wife and I came here after an oil recession, finished up my B2B business in Oklahoma. Romanticized as it was an enormously fascinating and beautiful place to finally land. So here's another international internet collaboration that could never have happened 2 decades before.
Escaping from the dawn, we flee to desert skies. The final dance is on, with no more alibis, as windmills madly spin our dreams from lovesick sighs. Their dancing shadows win a gleam from downcast eyes, rippling through the desert. The wind cannot deride the golden strings and sweet refrains that Palm Springs lullaby. The fiercely burning stars now shine in jewel-tipped glass. We sip our wine and slowly dine, fearing night will pass. Dry winds quickly change palm fronds to magic wands. We sink into a golden spa and sigh beneath a sea of stars. Life's now so lovely and so strange in our desert Shangri-La.
Now, all that is very nice, but that kind of brightness is only one part of the picture. The disruption of the internet affects almost every area of our life and professions, some ways positive and some ways quite negative. Let's take a short break.
It is the 15th century. El Tesoro de Cielo, a Spanish treasure ship, sends a scouting expedition to a strange island. Golden statues surrounding them prove the enormity of their find. Suddenly, hordes of ghoulish creatures with scaly green flesh and skeletal wings descend upon them from the sky.
What do you think of this, Rufio?
These creatures are fragile, Captain. We can take them with our swords.
They seem supernatural. Who knows what powers they possess?
Fallen angels, weakened by their treason.
My God! Are you saying they're Nephilim, the devil's host?
I'm saying, whatever they are, we can take them. Do any of you cowards dare join me?
Up against sharp knife-like nails and hideous fangs, the men's swords rip into slimy green flesh. Though black blood pours copiously from their half-naked bodies, creatures miraculously persist. Can the crew survive this bloody, cursed battle?
Find out more by Googling The Thrice Born, a new sci-fi supernatural novel by Carlos Lopez Avery and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Carlos Johnny Kendall, The Thrice Born. That's Carlos Johnny Kendall, The Thrice Born.
Nowadays, if you are a serious business person, just getting assistance from someone with a license and a bit of experience may not be sufficient. In fact, your realtor actually needs to be knowledgeable enough to be one of your top advisors. Whether you are facilitating a giant merger or selling your company, there's a lot at stake besides your finances. There is the future value of your current investment, financial freedom, integrity, and overall reputation. If you need this kind of assistance, Sandra LaFlamme is a real estate expert with the experience, reputation, and knowledge qualified to assist you in all your key transactions. Sandra LaFlamme, real estate services with integrity and conscience. Contact her today at 888-366-8070. That's Sandra LaFlamme at 888-366-8070. New Galaxy Enterprises is a media company specializing in wide-ranging content like novels, nonfiction books, screenplays, commercial advertising, web content, etc. One of our most esteemed providers is illustrator Robert W. Zalo. I work on all my most important projects like book covers, logos, web design elements with Robert. As an illustrator, he worked on the Ignatz-nominated comic book, The Expert's Guide to Killing Things That Go Bump in the Night. His skills encompass advertising, magazine illustrations, gaming, comic books, TV production, and scenic painting. His clients include Comcast, Adelphia, Haven Talent, ForceWorks, High Octane Theater, Star Creative Advertising. If you wish to contact Robert, go to JohnnyBlueStar.com and let me know. That's JohnnyBlueStar.com. for artist illustrator Robert Zalo, an essential component of all the work we do. Maybe he can help you too. We're back on Threshold after discussing the need for strong government protection from internet abuse. The need for protection of copyright ownership is one kind of protection we need. I'd like to bring up another aspect of this protection. There are certain sites which basically allow you to make comments about people or businesses. And these sites can actually, because they are third-party sites, they're publishing something, they actually can publish other people's comments without any kind of liability. Like on a local newspaper or radio station, depending on the state, will have anti-defamation laws. You can sue somebody, but the federal government has there are laws that protect people from being liable by these third-party publishers. And of course, to be on a radio station, even a national radio station, is not maybe sometimes as bad as being on something that can be seen by anybody throughout the world, depending on what your situation is. So we actually have something that's, again, the internet is allowing terrible damage to individuals and businesses to occur because there's no real protection for them, just like there is these copyrights and the core of people's living isn't really being protected.
Well, and I think what you're seeing, and let's look at it from a big picture, is that the internet's like the Wild West. It hasn't been around that long. You know, it might seem like it to the young people, but it really hasn't been. It's the Wild West, a whole new industry. The people who have been in power and positions to make decisions about legal rights and are in the authority positions in government didn't understand the internet. A lot of those people still don't really understand the internet, and the younger people are coming up, and they are the ones that really do have a better idea of what this internet is all about. And until we get more of those people who really understand it, start to make sense out of this, start to put laws and things in place to protect, and it's starting to happen, right? Well, let's hope it doesn't go in the wrong direction where it restricts our freedoms. But it's the Wild West, and it's just a natural evolution of society starting to put rules and regulations around a new paradigm and a new thing. And that will happen. It's just now we're in the middle of the chaos. It'll form and structure will be
the actual truth about this situation, which has to do with reputation management. There was a law that was really set up to protect people and third-party posters from putting out, say, pornography and getting immediately in trouble. So they gave them a certain freedom of liability, but it's the courts that allow this to go ballistic and expand to any kind of defamation. It wasn't the legislative actions, which seemed to be rather mild, but the interpretation of those laws. So the government itself participated fully consciously in allowing this type of defamation to exist without any...
Well, there will be a pushback by the people, and then the pushback will eventually work itself out. I mean, but right now, the pain that we're suffering in a Wild West new frontier environment is real, and it's harmful to individuals. The freedom is really great, but the pain is real. And so that the whole thing, the structure and the formality is still needing to be put around it. Now, there's a huge push to not put structure around this because of the freedom that we all enjoy with it. But, we enjoy
that freedom, though, Sarah, while people are watching everything that we do. So that isn't really, in other words, what you're saying, the idea that it's a wild, wild west has certainly been true. But recently, what's happened is that government really has intruded, even if there aren't laws about not saying things. If you think you're going to be surveyed, and there could be very, very terrible consequences for just saying anything.
Well, the government hasn't served its role to make capitalism and protect the people. They're going in and partaking in it. They're not doing
exactly.
and so there's issues there. But bottom line is the internet's new. relatively speaking. I mean, this is a historical thing. I mean, the fact that we can all communicate and do all these things. The printing press took 100 years to really perforate throughout societies. The internet's only been around for maybe 2 decades. So there's a lot of work yet to do to get this thing functioning in a way that's productive for society, but yet not restrictive.
But I do think that what happened is that the government and the corporate environment has jumped on the Orwellian paradigm to use in order to shape what's happening now.
Yeah, they've
very recently
joined in instead of doing what their role is, and that's not good. You know, we have to. That's why people say that you need to be. Well, Thomas Jefferson always said, "The nation that expects to be ignorant and free expects what never can and never will be." People need to educate themselves and understand what's going on, and then you have to fight for that. And if we don't fight for what is right, then we get what we get. And but we're in a new frontier. We really are, and things need to be worked out.
Well, we're going to return to this discussion of disruptive technology with Sarah K. Westall in just a few minutes. Ken Ead is a frequent guest on our show. In Ken Ead's novels, there is a profound exploration of the way our disruptive technology, as well as disruptive ideas about how government officials can attempt to evade our constitutional citizens' rights. In his novel, A Voluntary Spy, he explores the disruptive genetic technology of a large American corporation that conspires to create dangerous, genetically modified plants, taking advantage of a grossly underregulated industry. This is just one of his many books that integrate very serious issues with exciting suspense. One of the reasons I like working with Ken Ead is that he's a fighter for liberty and an advocate for the return of our constitutional rights. As a writer myself, interested both in real social problems and writing about them, but also working in a fictional genre in novels and screenplays, I sympathize with Ken Ead's understanding that communicating with the American people cannot just be with the kind of logic, discussion, and analysis, which I believe was well deployed in this program. Discussing at length the Bill of Rights. Yes, intellectual and legal outreach to American minds is important, but we must also reach out to their emotions. And I think, given both the work that he and I have done, I am totally committed to creating a kind of dual outreach in my work and to validate and promote the work that Ken Ead has done in his novels. One of these novels that directly deals with several of the Bill of Rights is A Patriot's Act, which handles the subject of torture and deprivation of legal rights to a naturalized American citizen who is falsely accused of terrorism. In the story, Ahmed Khoury, who was born in Iraq, goes to Baghdad to help his brother and is subjected to a brutality that mirrors the actual abuse suffered by so many prisoners accused of terrorism, but who are subjected to brutal interrogation while illegally detained without adequate counsel or the possibility of a speedy or fair trial. Here is an audio excerpt from Ken Ead's legal thriller, A Patriot's Act. It is not a fun excerpt, but it demonstrates the power of Ken's writing, but also the reality of what we are doing to lower the bar on human rights and willing to subject our own citizens to cruelty and a lack of justice that our Constitution was formulated to prevent. In this episode, after a mock execution, Ahmed wakes up in total darkness.
Chapter 3. Ahmed opened his eyes to complete blackness. Am I alive? Panicking, he put his hand in front of his face and he couldn't see it. He moved his fingers. Still nothing. Ahmed's frantic eyes moved back and forth, and there was not a sliver of light. I'm blind, he thought. A sudden surge of adrenaline compelled him to action. His brain sent a signal to stand up, and as he did, the pain shot from his feet to his head like a hammer hit on a high striker in a carnival. Gravity pulled his broken body to his knees, and he collapsed. He felt his body. No clothing. What happened? Am I dead? No, he thought. I must be alive. He was in too much pain to be dead. He felt his chest for bullet wounds, but found none. Except for some tender spots on his chest and back and some scrapes on his knees, there was nothing. They must have used rubber bullets. Ahmed strained to see, but it was no use. He felt his face. It was swollen and bruised. They must have blinded me in the shooting, he thought. As his other 4 senses came to life, he realized that he was sore all over. He tried to stand again, but his legs would not cooperate. He felt them with his new eyes. The bones felt straight and unbroken. Must be sprains, but why am I blind? He struggled to control the panic and the terror. Think. Have to think. Ahmed crawled on his hands and knees and propped himself up against the wall, which was as cold and damp as the floor. He felt along the walled boundaries of his confinement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 feet in one direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 feet in the other direction. Next, he negotiated the circumference on his hands and knees. How did he get himself into this mess? From his cozy home in Santa Barbara, to the battered and occupied Baghdad, to this. His brother Sabine needed his help, so he went. It was as simple as that. The next events were a blur to him. The raid, his capture. Now he was in some kind of military prison. Since his capture, Ahmed had been stripped naked, cavity searched, shaved bald, beaten, kicked, and spat on. And then the mock execution. It made his current confinement in this dark cage somewhat of a relief, not at all what it was designed for. The walls were as cold as a headstone. He felt around them until he came to a steel door. He thought of his wife, Catherine. She must know he was missing by now. But even if he was to be rescued, what good is a blind husband? An accountant by trade, there was no way he could work with figures as a blind man. He would be a complete burden on the entire family. The best thing to do is to kill myself, he thought. He had some life insurance, and wondered if it would pay off in the event of his suicide. The time passed, but Ahmed had no way of measuring it. How long have I been like this? Ahmed concentrated on his other senses, but there was no input save the sound of the pounding of his own heart. His mouth was as dry as a slab of jerky, so he tried to wet his broken lips with his tongue. In despair, he dropped to the floor. Lying there on his back, he rubbed his eyes, and suddenly he saw tiny stars above him in the blackness. Light! I can see light! The tiny stars spread out in a geometric pattern like symbols in a matrix. This can't be stars. They're not random. Ahmed's accountant's brain analyzed the patterns of light, but then they turned into eyes, angrily staring at him. Stop! Stop! Please! Somebody help me! Then the eyes pulled back to reveal a miniature firing squad with their rifles trained on Ahmed. He heard the blast of the rifles, almost in slow motion, and felt the bullets ripping through his flesh as his brain switched off.
We're back on Threshold Radio with Sarah K. Westall, and we're discussing disruptive technology. And let's return for a moment to to printing in general, and what has happened throughout the centuries to this technology and its effect on people and actually on freedom.
Well, I think it's a really interesting thing to look at, how that all came to be with the printing press and how, history and relate it to what's going on today. And, when the printing press, before the printing press happened, monks would do all the writing, and they were the educated people in society. And there was, the very wealthy were educated, but the regular people were not. They didn't know how to read. They didn't know how to write. And when the printing press came out, that's when the masses suddenly had a means of being able to learn how to read and write. And the printing press, it was a one-to-many technology. And it was an amazing advancement for society because now the masses could learn. And that's when schools started being set up. And that's when society fundamentally changed. But, that's when we started getting pushback from a lot of institutions. I know the Catholic Church was pushing back because what happened is there were factions that were starting to compete with the Catholic Church or with governments. Institutions, monarchies, and dictators were in place, mostly monarchies at the time, and they were trying to fight for freedom as well. And so the interesting thing is when you look at the countries that restricted the freedom of the printing press compared to the countries that didn't, they are still feeling the economic impacts of that. The countries that allowed the printing press to be free and people to be freely able to learn, it really is credited for bringing on the Renaissance, the explosion of learning and art and science. And the countries that did not allow that to flourish fell behind economically. And to this day, they are still economically behind the ones that allowed the printing press to flourish.
That's really amazing.
Yeah, and the thing that we should learn from that is if we look at the internet today, you see a lot of that same patterns occurring where people are worried about, we have real issues as far as, reputation, people tearing down people's reputation and all the bad things that we're seeing occurring on the internet. However, there's this swelling of people fearful of what the internet is doing, whether it's business people, the business agendas wanting to maintain their power and control over an industry, or whether it's governments wanting to maintain power and control over geopolitics or whatever they're trying to get accomplished. But the countries and the areas that restrict freedom of information, it's not necessarily freedom to do bad things. It's not freedom to break the laws. That's different. Freedom to break the laws, you want to cut that down. But freedom to pass information that's truth, that's reality. Freedom to pass truth and learning and flourishing and science and advancement in society. You got to look at what happened to the countries back when the printing press, the countries that, that restricted that freedom and that growth fell economically. And that is the same thing that's going to happen today with the countries that limit that growth, because what you're ultimately limiting is freedom of innovation and growth and thriving as a society. And so it's important for us to, take that big picture and learn from history, which would be an amazing thing, huh? Learning from history.
It would be. It doesn't seem like we've learned too much, insofar as we now have, we have a disruptive nuclear technology that stands poised at any moment to do something much more dangerous than anything that's ever happened before, except for maybe climate change. So
yeah, the nuclear stuff is pretty scary. That's a whole nother topic.
Yes, we will go to keep that from happening, from getting into too painful a discussion.
Let's be positive sometimes.
Yeah. So because this, we're going to go in a little bit direction, and we're going to discuss your main interest here. Let's go back to this article by Cuddy, where he points out the analysis of the disruptive process developed by Stephen Sinofsky, who he says is a former Microsoft president, and Andreessen Horowitz, who Cuddy points out is a board partner investor. These are guys who worked on a theory. He says, while Sinofsky writes primarily about the disruptive effects of technology on established industries and incumbents, I think the framework he proposes is instructive for book publishing. So here's Cuddy's take on the 4 stages of disruption described by Sinofsky. So the first part, it's where the innovative product is introduced. Sinofsky calls this disruption stage. In music, focusing on consumer listening to songs being played, I'd say this is digital downloads and streaming beginning to replace vinyl, CDs, and other hard, things like cassettes, and to grab market share. The second stage is called evolution, and that's where innovation spreads to the industry. At this point, evolution begins to grow, and I'd say now we're talking about various accessory products to the computer, including internet programs like Pandora and iTunes and YouTube, and technology like cell phones, tablets, and even satellite radio starting to consume the music space. So now everything is moving into the internet, and it's spreading very quickly. The third stage is convergence, where the old sector in the industry and the spanking new invader begin to work together. This happened, like you said before, vinyl is basically a small niche now, though it exists, and there are still CDs around. But in the fourth stage, which may have started already, it's called reimagination, where the imprint and evolution of the new invader takes over, like the car did for the horse and buggy. Although I believe you can still take some kind of ride around Central Park, you're certainly not riding around in those things, although sometimes I really appreciate it if we could. What do you think of this particular delineation of the disruptive process? Where we're talking about disruption, evolution, convergence, and reimagination. What is your big picture like of the disruption process?
Well, I think it's, fairly accurate. I mean, disruption is something that comes in and takes market share from somebody else from a business perspective, but disruption from a society perspective, disruption can be a negative word. And I don't necessarily look at it as negative in the sense of how, because not everything is, most innovations where we're making advancements isn't a negative thing. If it's, depending on your perspective, it's disruption to the company that has power that's losing market share. And so in that sense, it's disruptive to the status quo, but it could be a very beneficial thing for society. Now, it starts off, it gets introduced, people realize what it is, and then, there's usually a fight back. They try to do whatever they can to keep that technology from losing their market share. And then it eventually goes side by side, and then it eventually takes over. And the reason it takes longer to take over is because there's that pushback by the powers that be. The development that you'll see now with businesses is they know that's the process, and they don't want to be the business that loses out and loses market share and is the victim of disruption. And so what's now going on is there's a process of venture capital and investing that's going on with the powers that be. So the people who are and the companies that are in power now know that the innovation happens at the smaller companies. And so what they're doing is they're funding a lot of that innovation through venture capitalists. They're owning these small companies, and then they're buying them out. So they're owning a specific, a decent percentage. Once they get to a certain size, they buy them out. So they're buying out this innovation to make sure they're not victims of this disruption. And so there's good and bad to that. In theory, if they're the ones supporting the disruption and supporting innovation, we could really flourish. But the problem is if their current industry is a cash cow and it's really, really making them money, and the disruption that's coming or the new innovation that's coming won't be as profitable, then they're going to buy it out and then shut it down.
Whoops, I think you're talking about the oil business.
Well, I'm talking about every industry, but yes, okay. The oil business is like that.
It's kind of a major problem that type of technology is being suppressed. Well,
but it's being systematized, right? It's the process is being, because they figured it out a lot. The business world has figured it out. There's been so many disruptions where there's been a lot of victims, and a lot of giants have gone under. And so instead of just being blind and putting our blinders on, let's partake in it. Let's shut them down. Let's either buy them out and be on the front of this, and let's lead this innovation because we can make more money this way, or at least we can make the same amount. But if it's going to hurt our cash cow and we're going to make less, then let's not let this go forward. Well, and so that's the trends going on right there with disruption.
Well, we're approaching the end of our program. This is there's going to be another break in a moment, but let me just mention something about the Cuddy's discussion of the publishing business. I would say that what he's talking about is really starts with Amazon, which when it was released and being introduced to the marketplace in 2007 to 2009. Well, then what happens next is Kindle, the product of Amazon, begins to become a massive element along with other ebooks from 2010 to 2013. Now, in phase 3, this convergence phase, you can still I get a lot of books from Amazon, hardcover books. I go to the library. I'm still reading books. They're still around. There are still bookstores, but there are less bookstores, right, Sarah?
Less bookstores. People tend to go with ebooks more and more.
But even so, there is still a sort of a brisk business.
Yes, it is.
So just before we go to our break, just give me an idea what you might foresee for the next level when the convergence level is over with and we start to get into reimagination and the whole industry is totally goes online.
Well, it really comes to what the young people do, because we grew up with books. So our paradigm of books, ebooks or books, we just like books still. But, I teach at the University of Minnesota. I teach an entrepreneur class, and I've taught for a couple of years now. And each time I like to have my book online because it's easier to work with. And a lot of the students, use it online. Some buy books and other ones just go completely online. And I think it all comes down to what the young people are going to do. And I keep saying that because they've grown up differently than we have. You look at students, they still have books, but so much of their stuff is happening online. And so it just like, and I keep saying the printing press took 100 years to really, infiltrate into societies. I don't know I think it could really be 100 years because the people, for something like ebooks and things to be online to completely take over. Now, when you look at the news online is completely taking over because we don't have time. I just want to read something quick online. I don't want to bother with the newspaper because the newspaper was always a quick read. It was always getting the headlines, quickly understanding what's going on and moving on. A book is a different paradigm. I'm picking something up and I'm reading something in depth and I'm really diving into this book, right?
Yeah.
So it's a different behavior and it's a different engagement with the media. And so it'll all come down to what these young people do as a way of life and how they like to function. Because us older people, I don't think we're ever going to completely change to ebooks as a mass, as everyone, for example, because there's too much of us that have grown up with books and still enjoy that process. Now, it all comes down to the young people. Are they going to completely change over and say, I don't need that anymore? And that's the big question. And I think it'll be based on their behavior.
Sarah, we're going to go to break now and we'll be back in a moment.
This is Johnny Bluestar. I've worked as a lyricist with Patricia Welch for over 5 years, along with Russian composer Edgar Ahrens, a friend and colleague. Her ability as a singer is simply amazing. She brings a unique and dramatic flair to every song she sings. Over the next few months, we shall be releasing a number of these songs, part of an album called Hadley's Castle. Meanwhile, Patricia has been busy creating a super enjoyable collection of classic standards in an exciting 46-song, 3-CD collection.
Music for Great Entertaining introduces Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia Welch. 3 hours of continuous music. 46 of the all-time classic standards, spanning decades of hit songs. Going to a friend's home for dinner? Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia also makes the perfect hostess gift. This 3-CD compilation is the perfect background music that sets just the right mood for any dinner party.
I'm crazy for feeling so lonely. There was a boy, a very strange, enchanted boy.
To purchase this album, just go to patriciawelch.com/CD. That is patriciawelch.com/CD. You won't be disappointed.
The following is from West Side Warrior, the memoir of Ray Boylan, a Korean War veteran and crime fighter. He was there fighting in the world's coldest battlefield when the Chinese communists invaded.
Desperate squad members ran past our foxhole yelling, "Get the hell out of here, there's too many of them!" Again, we saw the Chinese soldiers charging in with opium-induced mindlessness, oblivious of our bullets. Again, we heard the bugles and whistles. Climbing out of our foxhole, Bob dropped 2 hand grenades behind us, and I threw one over my shoulder. Bullets whizzing by our heads, Bob and I became bolts of lightning flashing across the mountainside. Like a hideous film, desperate scenes like this played out on the Tokong Pass for 3 days. Sometimes I played in the scene. Sometimes I could only watch and wonder if it were real, or if I'd be suddenly jolted out of my trance by an RKO usher saying, "Hey, did you kids sneak in here?"
To acquire this book, Google westsidewarrior.boylan.kindle. Boylan is spelled Boylan. That's West Side Warrior, Boylan, Kindle.
We're back on Threshold Radio. This is unfortunately, the end of this wonderful program with Sarah K. Westall discussing disruptive technology and its effect on the world and our country. Sarah, could you tell us something about how to contact you and the various things that you offer the public and possibly even advertisers?
Oh, absolutely. You can go to my website at sarahwestall.com, SARAH Westall.com, and you can find all my past shows. And I cover all sorts of things, from energy and economics and medicine. There's just so many things where there's innovation and exciting things going on. And of course, I'm always looking for sponsors. My radio show is within the next month or two, we're going to be going nationwide. Right now, we air in New York, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. And we're on over 90 channels in podcasts, but we're going to be airing nationwide and actually in 120 countries. So it's going pretty broad. Yeah, it's pretty broad. And so we are looking for sponsors all the time. And it's a very unique show where I have just top guests all the time, really diving into these topics. And once again, I take a business perspective. I try to stay positive. We got a little negative on some things, but reality sometimes is the truth can be negative at times. And we try to take a positive spin on things, but it's not always positive. But it's a business perspective. And I think there's a lot we can learn by talking to the top experts all over the world.
Me too. And I encourage everyone to visit Sarah's website and listen to her program. I did, and I enjoyed very much. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I had so much fun, and there's so much more I could talk about.
Well, we will. We're going to ask you to come back. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Take care. My company, New Galaxy Enterprises, is a California corporation specializing in the creation of media and promotional content. We are focused on original, innovative projects that are good for humanity. These projects could be nonfiction books or novels, fictional screenplays or documentary content, websites and website content, commercial advertising content for print, audio, or video products on the internet, television, or radio, musical scores for advertising, television, or film, video, audio editing, etc. We want to promote products and projects that support the environment, encourage a healthy experience in living, developing, nurturing, and useful technology, and offering platforms for positive, socially constructive entertainment or informative, transformative media. Our experience in creating a variety of products like this is rather vast, and we offer client-based and collaborative products, as well as the opportunity of active investors to join us in the creation and promotion of proprietary products, some of which are in latter stages of development. For more information, go to www.newgalaxyenterprises.com. That's www.newgalaxyenterprises.com. If you're interested in talking to us, just fill out the contact sheet and we will get back with you. Patty Greer is a singer, songwriter, and musician whose life took a strange change in direction, leading her to become an expert in the arcane subject of crop circles. This transformation of her life gave her a sense of direction and purpose that turned her into an award-winning filmmaker and relentless explorer of dozens of crop circles. Her songs on YouTube and her films that can be bought or sampled on pattygreer.net are a must for anyone challenged by the strange phenomena of crop circles that have appeared throughout the world, particularly in England. Her films are wonderful, but her songs and music give us a sense of why this caring person was chosen to be one of the most important advocates to remind us of this incredible phenomena right in our midst. We go out with Patty Greer's We Want Our Planet Back.
We want our planet back. It's been going on too long. Everyone is waking up, and the animals are strong. Nature needs rebounding, so we're wishing on the stars. I'm just a kid at heart, and that is where we start. Who's in charge here? Who's in charge here? Let's do it differently. It's sickening all the people, and it's killing all the trees. It's falling in our eyes, and it's getting harder to see the beauty that is our world and the freedom to be free. It's landing in the water. We know it's in the air. It's time for you and me to show we care. Say no to GMOs hiding in our food, and no to fluoride in our water too. Who's in charge here? Let's save this family and do what's right for Earth and you and me. Step into the new way, where we live in harmony. No more war, no more fracking. We are free. Here. Who's in charge? Let's do it differently. Sickening all the people, and it's killing all the trees. It's falling in our eyes, and it's getting harder to see the beauty that is our world and the freedom to be free. We got our planet back. It went on far too long, and now everybody woke up and the animals stayed strong. Nature is rebounding and we're working with the stars. We have free energy. Oh, look at who we are. Here, and we love this family. All of the birds, the whales, and the E.T.s. We are free. We are free.
This is Johnny Bluestar. Welcome to Threshold, a global media event. Is the universe just a random dance of atoms, or is it a manifestation of a supremely intelligent architect? Can its purpose, or our purpose here on Earth, be adequately assessed? Can we commune with it, know its intentions, cooperate with its direction? Here, we define threshold as a gateway state of awareness, allowing mankind to cross into a place of real cognition. Threshold allows us to approach questions of higher reality through the door of experience, rather than mere belief. Welcome to Threshold, where we tear away the veil from commercial media, bringing our audience and participants into another realm of reality and enhanced communication.
Welcome back to Threshold. On Threshold, we believe in individual and collective destiny. We believe in a purpose in life and the ability to be guided by a higher power. And in keeping with these peculiar notions, we are very particular about who we invite. Our guests need not share our views about our methodology of selection, but we believe they should realize that we think they are all very special. I suppose we were initially drawn to Sarah K. Westall, who I fortunately found on LinkedIn, by the fact she was a radio host at the Conscious Radio Network. And we were initially impressed by her focus on disruptive technology and game changers, as well as her seeming regard for individual rights and the freedoms who we as citizens of America and planet Earth were all meant to have. So given our interest in this sense of purpose, which we believe inhabits overtly or sometimes secretly tucked away underneath our human personalities in each individual, we are happy to invite Sarah to our program. Sarah, please explain to our audience how you came to be interested in developing a program called Business Game Changers on the network called Conscious Radio. We are also interested in telling our audience about how you discovered your mission, or perhaps one of your primary missions in life, something which gives us human beings a good reason to enjoy our life on this planet. Sarah, tell us all about yourself.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for that awesome intro. I really appreciate it. But yeah, my show is Business Game Changers, and we're on the Conscious Business Radio Network. And I just absolutely love what I do. But I cover innovation, disruption, and big issues. I'm very interested in covering impactful inventions and society shifts or paradigm shifts. And I usually or mostly take a business perspective. And that's because business tends to drive pretty much everything that happens. Hopefully the needs of the people drives business, but that's not always the case, as we are well aware.
Something called the need for profit.
Yeah, there is. Yes. And business tries to strive for the needs of the people, but it doesn't always work that way, as we know. But I really try to take a big picture look at what's going on. And it's critical in determining, taking a big picture is critical in determining where the events and innovations and trends are taking us from a society point of view in the short and long term. And how I do this is I bring in leading experts in business and science and economics and government, not just celebrities, but also people who've been in the trenches, people who've led big companies or are leading innovation. I try to bring on people who I really believe have insight and have some real experience and great insight onto what's going on, people who are in the middle of the trenches. Sometimes that's where you get the best information from. And, I think that how that differs is that most of the media out there, and unfortunately, they focus on either trivial, issues or things that they just more fluff pieces, things that are more entertaining, or they tend to focus on just parts of the picture, and it tends to be more tunnel vision.
Well, I'm curious as to what motivated you to actually do this kind of thing, because, like you say, this is not typical. And yet, I believe it is critically important. This is what we need to understand if we're going to play a part as citizens and consumers.
Well, how I started is I have an engineering degree and a business background, and I was initially, when I came out of college, I worked for U.S. West Communications, which is one of the, the telecommunication baby. It wasn't a baby bell, but it kind of came out of that whole system. Right. And at that time, I moved up pretty quick in that company, and I was responsible for all the systems design for the networking part of US West. And that meant I designed the overall data perspective on the internet part of US West, which enterprise, which was part of US West, was we were launching the internet. And back in the early 90s, the internet was just up and coming. And I was responsible for all the system design for that organization. And it was kind of a heady time because US West had 75% of the internet backbone, which was Frame Relay at that time. Wow. So yeah, it was really interesting. And we had all the big companies wanting to partner with us. We had, Netscape at the time, Microsoft, AT&T. We were also one of the only companies in the country that had a full Next computer, which was the predecessor to Apple, what Apple is today, because they used all their hardware, or not their hardware, their software is the backbone of the Apple computer today, which was Steve Jobs' company when he left Apple.
Well, I saw the movie about Steve Jobs.
I don't know if we were in there, but we had a complete...
Next was in the movie. That was a big part of the movie, actually.
Yeah, well, and next we were we were the telecommunication company that had a full blown implementation of the Next computer across our division, and that was the internet. And so we were a big deal at the time. I doubt that was in the movie because it was so business and technology oriented that I doubt they would get into the details of that.
No, they didn't get into those details. It was just that he kind of used his ideas as leverage to get back in the game again.
Oh yes, and he did, and it was Unix based, right?
Yeah.
And Unix was developed at AT&T, and AT&T was a big deal at the time. And Unix is so much more powerful, so much better than any of the other operating systems out there, and that's what Apple's built on today. And all the server environments and such were based on that. But how I got into what I'm doing today is I was responsible for modeling the business from end to end. And so I ended up seeing this big picture look at business from all the way from pre-sales and analysis all the way to, to selling, to implementing, to operating a business. And so I ended up getting this big picture look at analyzing the internet business. And so I was in all these executive meetings, and I was seeing this big picture look at something that was going to change the world coming onto the stage. And I was in charge of the system design at that point.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I had just an amazing part at a very young age, part of this thing. And it really taught me a different perspective. That what I struggled with was the fact that marketing was so much more important than when the dot-com boom happened.
Right, sure.
Marketing was so much more important than reality. People were putting together just BS and they were getting funded. The people who were really putting together good things weren't being funded unless they had the BS to go back behind it. The really good creators were being taken advantage of by the financiers. It was just it was backwards. Everything to me seemed backwards. And so I just kind of got into my thing. I used my same strategy of understanding that whole system environment to understanding the world, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. And used it as a paradigm.
Yeah, because it's a lot of the same, and I hear other leaders in different industries are using some of those same approaches to aging or for curing cancer or for doing different things, and I really think it is how you can solve problems, and you can really connect dots. You look at patterns and relationships between all sorts of things, and that's what I did. Except it was across the entire network environment.
Very interesting. Well, in honor of your interest, we're going to look at various game changes in various industries, mostly involving disruptive technology, and assess how these changes have affected life in America and in the rest of the world. So we're going to use your paradigm in the biggest possible way. Let me just make a little statement about the word disruptive, and you tell me if I'm correct. As I understand it, disruptive refers to the effect of a new technology or a new way of doing things, how it might affect an industry, forcing changes that might affect profitability in an older sector in that industry as it yields to profitability in a new sector. In some cases, it could greatly decrease overall revenues in the entire industry, like conceivably what cars did to the horse and buggy business at the turn of the century, which at one point was a transportation business for people to get around. From the standpoint of the transportation sector of our economy, This was a tremendous move upwards, although it was a disaster for the buggy manufacturers, I'm sure. On the other hand, it was purely golden for the car business, the new kid on the back in the transportation sector. Now, I'm not talking about trains and steamships here. I'm really talking about people riding around with their families, say, getting things done, going places, even for business in a smaller way. On the other hand, I doubt if anyone could say in the long run it was so much of a plus for environment, the health of American citizens, or the vitality of the horse trade, or for the safety of the persons transported, compared to riding around in a horse-drawn vehicle. But of course, the value of the car to the public for business and pleasure is exponential. I've not seen much change of regressing to the horse and buggy domination of the transportation market. Well, I should say, unless some of the people in political power remain there, it might be possible. Of course, who knows what self-driven cars will do to the industry. Soon we will no longer know how to flush toilets or pull paper towels out of receptacles. Now for the next segment that we're going to do in a minute or two after a commercial break, I'd like you to paint a picture of technological disruption that occurred in the newspaper, say since the early 60s, when offline newspapers were the foundation of that business. Will you be able to help us with that?
I sure can, or I'll try my best.
Well, we'll be back in a few minutes. This is Threshold Radio. Speaking of disruption, here's a song by Zave Nathan and Bonnie Blazak about positive disruption, something we desperately need. It's called Change.
That in the midst of death, life persists. In the midst of untruth, truth persists. In the midst of darkness, light persists.
Genuine peace, the kind of peace that makes life on earth worth living, the kind that enables men and nations to grow and to hope and build a better life for their children. Peace for all men and women, peace in all time.
one human being. Out of 6 billion human beings, I'm one of them. I believe with every human being wants happy life, successful life.
This was one of many great songs by Zave and Bonnie. Listen to their music on SoundCloud Zave Music. Now here's something about Boots in Manhattan, a novel I've written with U.S. Marine veteran and career crime fighter Ray Boylan. Before we wrote this, I helped Ray edit his fantastically interesting memoir, West Side Warrior. Both books are available in Kindle.
Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s who was a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called dwarves, the youngest members of this stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy. We ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry, and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hand. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
Nowadays, if you are a serious business person, just getting assistance from someone with a license and a bit of experience may not be sufficient. In fact, your realtor actually needs to be knowledgeable enough to be one of your top advisors. Whether you are facilitating a giant merger or selling your company, there's a lot at stake besides your finances. There is the future value of your current investment, financial freedom, integrity, and overall reputation. If you need this kind of assistance, Sandra LaFlamme is a real estate expert with the experience, reputation, and knowledge qualified to assist you in all your key transactions. Sandra LaFlamme, real estate services with integrity and conscience. Contact her today at 888-366-8070. That's Sandra LaFlamme at 888-366-8070.
This is Johnny Bluestar. We're back with Sarah K. Westall discussing disruptive technology, and particularly Sarah has promised me that she will help us look at a particular industry. It's a good example, I think, to choose the newspaper business, which I think is rather interesting what's happened to it. But first, I'd like to play 2 short segments of speeches. The first is from President Kennedy in a speech delivered to the American Newspaper Publishers Association in the Waldorf Astoria in April 12, 1961.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Although this was made 55 years ago, I believe that many people today who care about America would feel very safe with the sentiments Kennedy delivered at the time. Sarah, how do you feel about Kennedy's comments in this segment? Am I not correct in thinking that the newspaper business in 1961 had experienced many decades of reasonable continuity as far as technology was concerned?
Well, yeah, it was pretty consistent. They had the printing press for a long time, and the newspaper business was different than it is today, obviously. We don't have a huge newspaper sector like we did then, but it was also a lot more spread out, a lot more smaller independent newspapers. So there was a lot more thought given to independent thought, and you could get more information on just daily events inside local communities. And also the funding was there to fund journalists overseas and to get good information. You know, everything is so business. The bottom line is so important now that we don't get that same. But going to what you were saying about Kennedy, I think that when you look at what was everything has to be done in context. During that time, the Cold War was going on, and it was just a different time. People were much more innocent. The masses were much more innocent. I think that people trusted their government much more. The words that Kennedy used in that speech would be taken different today, I think. Because, and I think you're going to have a clip that you're going to play of Obama.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And, Obama was much more direct at transparency in the clip. And, Kennedy put a trust in the people to self-monitor, to don't publish things that's going to hurt the United States, right? And he was asking for people to be responsible. Now, if a president today said that, there would be an outcry. I mean, I'm not sure if people would respond the same way. 2020 vision, looking back at Kennedy, people look at him as a good president and they see him as what he was trying to do, and they take him on his word. Today, I'm not sure if we take people on their word. We just don't trust anything that anyone says of our politicians. So we just don't view it the same way.
Well, I agree with that. Well, as someone who's been working in media most of my adult life, I think what has astounded me most was the arrival of the internet, which you had worked on in the beginning, and in so many ways has been such a blessing. And in my case, back in the 1990s, I believe it held the future of the newspaper business. So I developed an internet platform for a community newspaper in Coachella Valley called CV News, and I advertised for citizen reporters or volunteer reporters to assist me in its development. My idea at the time was to develop a platform that could be utilized in different areas throughout the world, sort of a voluntary global internet news platform. In other words, I was looking to put CNN, a volunteer type of CNN platform, on the internet. But I was very disappointed because there wasn't much of an audience for news and advertisers on the internet. Many people had already tried out advertising. It was nowhere near as big as it is now, and I was more or less forced out of business by an unreceptive market. Later, when the rise of Huffington News came, and with the idea of citizen reporters, which was built into her paradigm, and then there were many other online newspapers virtually changing everything, I believe I was proven to be some kind of a prophet, very sadly years ahead of his time. Looking at the 1990s, Sarah, what do you think was the point of view of consumers and industry in general towards the internet? How many individuals and businesses realized that you probably did that it would eventually obliterate many of our ideas and ways of doing business?
Well, people don't see changes before they come. People are getting better at it, and executives are getting better at it, but they just in general won't see it, especially if it's going to be a huge paradigm shift, which the internet really was. And I mean, it's just like the personal computer, right? Xerox didn't want to invest in it. HP didn't want to invest in it. I mean, there was huge companies that would not invest in the personal computer. And thus you have, Gates' story, Microsoft's story, and you have Apple's story, and you look at their stories. It's a very common trend throughout all of history. People just don't know what the next big thing is going to be. They're trying hard now. And because there's been so many obvious bad experiences, that executives are trying hard not to be in that same pitfall. And we have a whole industry now of venture capitalists trying to, find those next big things. But back in the day when the internet was taking off, you were a early starter, right? You're one of the first pioneers in it. And a lot of times the pioneers aren't the ones that end up cashing in. It's the fast follower, because the cost to get to that next level is you have to wait it out, and the cost to educate the consumer is long, hard, and expensive. So the timing coming into the industry is the most important thing.
I mean, I really actually envisioned this whole thing that happened.
Yeah, you were right.
I mean, I also, when I was doing The Adventures of Ganymede Jones, which was my first science fiction radio series, I saw a place for film franchises in the science fiction field. This was before Star Trek and Star Wars started it. And I actually envisioned it, and I tried to do it. But again, I was a little bit early.
Yeah, timing is so important. It's hard. The road is littered with people who came in too early, and being a fast follower, and timing is something special, and figuring that out. And there's a lot of luck to business. It's not all just being a genius. It's also about having luck. And it sounds like you have all the right stuff. It just, you needed a little luck.
Well, maybe with talking to people like you, I'm on my way.
Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I hope so.
We're going to now get into a more serious side of this. And I'd like to play this interesting piece from which I'm calling, or which has been called, Obama's Promise of Transparency to America, that I think, at least in content, aligns with Kennedy's desire for openness in government.
But the way to make a government responsible is not simply to enlist the services of responsible men and women, or to sign laws that ensure that they never stray. The way to make government responsible is to hold it accountable. And the way to make government accountable is make it transparent, so that the American people can know exactly what decisions are being made, how they're being made, and whether their interests are being well served. The directives I am giving my administration today on how to interpret the Freedom of Information Act will do just that. For a long time now, there's been too much secrecy in this city. The old rules said that if there was a defensible argument for not disclosing something to the American people, then it should not be disclosed. That era is now over. Starting today, every agency and department should know that this administration stands on the side not of those who seek to withhold information, but those who seek to make it known. To be sure, issues like personal privacy and national security must be treated with the care they demand. But the mere fact that you have the legal power to keep something secret does not mean you should always use it. The Freedom of Information Act is perhaps the most powerful instrument we have for making our government honest and transparent, and of holding it accountable. And I expect members of my administration not simply to live up to the letter, but also the spirit of this law. I will also hold myself, as president, to a new standard of openness. Going forward, anytime the American people want to know something that I or a former president wants to withhold, we will have to consult with the Attorney General and the White House counsel, whose business it is to ensure compliance with the rule of law. Information will not be withheld just because I say so. It will be withheld because a separate authority believes my request is well grounded in the Constitution. Let me say it as simply as I can. Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
I'd like to underscore how Obama says transparency and the rule of law will govern his administration. I contend that Obama's transparency promise, which came after the Bush administration, was an indication, as were many of his campaign promises, of a return to constitutional practices and a revival of the hope of ridding our social system of non-ethically challenging use of internet technology, specifically affecting the news industry and the access of the public to meaningful news. How do you look at the transparency issue in light of things that happened after this little, so well-articulated promise was made?
Well, I think it's pretty interesting what he said. It's almost crazy what he said. You don't really know what his agenda is. Is he trying to tell people that that's what it's going to be to try to get the masses will believe almost anything they're told. And there's a certain effect that they really want to believe what they're being told. So he might be talking to them, or he might have intended at the time to be more transparent. I don't know, but obviously he hasn't been that transparent.
Sarah, what I say to that, the people who have said to me, well, Obama, there was pressure on Obama when he became part of the presidency, which he was already, I believe, when he made that statement. I don't think that what has happened and continued to happen by the Bush administration could possibly not have been in the works before he became president, because he would have to think that way. The way he was thinking and the way he projects his thoughts in this particular segment is why he was elected. But it doesn't reflect anything that happened in his administration.
Well, it's really hard to watch someone speak so candidly about an open and honest government and then watch the behavior that is so not that is so opposite of that, and wonder what really is going on. And let me just give you, some examples of some of the secretive nature of this government, which is, it's hard to watch that clip, really, when you see some of the secret things that they're doing, like the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement.
Right.
And that's a big trade agreement that we did with so many countries. And it was so secretive. Congress had to go into a guarded room, could not take pictures. They couldn't take notes. They couldn't make copies. They couldn't divulge details. And it was such a secretive process. And that, to me, is just completely against what he was talking about there. The other thing is crazy is that, the persecution of whistleblowers that we've had with this administration. We are currently considered the 49th in the world. According to Reporters Without Borders, they do a Freedom of the Press Index, and we are currently rated 49th in the world. Now, 49th isn't as bad as it sounds, because there's a huge gap between, we're the lowest of kind of that upper group of countries, and then there's a huge drop, but it's still bad. And we have had more persecutions of whistleblowers under this administration than all other administrations combined under the Espionage Act. And it's just crazy that speech could also coincide with this administration. So I don't know where he was at mentally. Obviously, he was coming off a campaign where the Bush administration was accused of so much confidentiality, and there was a lot of confidentiality. But, there's a poll that Fox News, now it's Fox News, of course, and you have to take it for what it is, but they did do a poll, and they said that 37%, this is a poll on whether they believe that, whether Obama tells lies or not. And it said 37% said most of the time, 24% said some of the time, 20% said only now and then, and 15% said never. So 81% of Americans believe that Obama lies to them at least now and then on important matters. So that's pretty significant. It's Fox News and you don't know, but I'm sure they did some kind of poll where it came out this way.
Well, yes, they wouldn't mind Obama being considered a liar by the public. But I think anybody who spends any time looking at his campaign, the campaign that he was proposing and what has actually been done, would have to go into almost the state of shock. We're going to take a break now, and we'll be back in just a couple of minutes, and we will explore some of the implications of what you've been talking about, Sarah. Now, here's some information and a taste of the powerful and inventive musical compositions of the Russian composer Edgar Ahrens. Edgar, since a child, aspired to writing musical scores for film, but he also began a number of years ago to work with myself as lyricist and the amazing Patricia Welch as a performer on a variety of songs. But now, let's hear something from the purely musical side of his efforts.
I've worked with Russian composer Edgar Arendt for quite a few years, building an inventory of songs, many of which feature singer-performer Patricia Welch. We will soon be releasing these songs, components of an album and a musical in progress called Hadley's Castle. When Edgar and I first got together, I was amazed by the brilliance of his musical scores created for movies, TVs, and animations. Here is a sample of the work he did on the Russian TV series, available now on Amazon, called The Secret Agent's Memoir, which had 2 seasons. This score is called Escape and was created for the first season. I am very pleased to say that Bridge of Light Productions, a division of New Galaxy Enterprises, is proud to be the contact point for television and film companies seeking information about this amazing composer's work. If you are in the entertainment business and wish to know more, contact me at johnnybluestar@gmail.com. That's johnnybluestar@gmail.com.
It is the 15th century. El Tesoro de Cielo, a Spanish treasure ship, sends a scouting expedition to a strange island. Golden statues surrounding them prove the enormity of their find. Suddenly, hordes of ghoulish creatures with scaly green flesh and skeletal wings descend upon them from the sky.
What do you think of this, Rufio?
These creatures are fragile, Captain. We can take them with our swords.
They seem supernatural. Who knows what powers they possess?
Fallen angels, weakened by their treason.
By God, are you saying they're Nephilim, the devil's host?
I'm saying, whatever they are, we can take them. Do any of you cowards dare join me?
Up against sharp knife-like nails and hideous fangs, the men's swords rip into slimy green flesh. Though black blood pours copiously from their half-naked bodies, creatures miraculously persist. Can the crew survive this bloody, cursed battle?
Find out more by Googling The Thrice Born, a new sci-fi supernatural novel by Carlos Lopez Avery and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born. That's Carlos Johnny Kindle, The Thrice Born.
We're back on Threshold Radio with Sarah K. Westall. We're discussing disruptive technology, but right now we're trying to penetrate into the existence of the newspaper business as it does now, and the effect of the internet on it, and various aspects of this that might show a certain disrespect for constitutional rights that goes even beyond the Fourth Amendment and right into the heart, say, of the First Amendment, which protects freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Both freedom of speech and freedom of the press revolve to a large extent around traditional and online media to reach their audience, right?
Yeah, I would say that, the freedom of the press has changed quite a bit, or the press has changed quite a bit. With the advent of the internet, now we have, instead of a media of one to many, we have a many to many kind of situation going on. So we have people communicating with each other all over the place. Social media has exploded. And so we have the advent of everyday people being journalists and putting information out there. And that has completely changed the way people are getting their information. Well, it's completely changed the way people have gotten information. The problem is people don't know what information is good and what isn't. And I just did a story on the Second Amendment, and it was amazing when I was looking for facts for both sides. And you can find, something coming out of Harvard that says that, keeping guns, restricting the Second Amendment, coming up with more restrictions has helped murders go down in this country. And then you can find the opposite side where it says that more guns makes people more safe, coming from another journal coming out of Harvard. right?
Yeah.
And so depending on where you look, you find statistics on all sides. So people, while we have a lot more information, we have a lot more confusion as well, because we don't know whether the information is accurate or not. I mean, let's be honest. We have information that's true. We have information that's blatantly false and just made up. And then we also have information that's just wrong. They're perpetuating wrong myths, lies, whatever, because the people who are putting it out do that on purpose, and then they repeat it not knowing that it's a lie. And so it's very confusing right now for so many people, because how do you know what's true unless you're the one researching it yourself?
I think you almost have to be omniscient to be sure. And I don't know if most of us are capable of that yet.
Well, I suppose the goal is to find sources that you trust and then keep listening to them and try to get that information. The problem is that our trust has been eroded. A lot of the sources that we have traditionally trusted, we don't trust anymore, because we know that they are a mouthpiece for the government or administration or for big corporation. And not that government and big corporation is necessarily evil, because it's not, right? It's of the people. Making money isn't
of the people.
Yeah, yes. And it's not that corporations are necessarily evil, because making money in and of itself isn't evil. And we all work for something that makes money. That's how we eat. That's how we survive. Everybody has to make money. However, when the goals are making money at the expense of everyone else, and you're going to do whatever you can, doing propaganda, doing whatever you need to make money, that's when things go down. And the same with the government. They just passed a law a couple years ago that it is legal to put propaganda on the American citizens. And that is scary. So basically, the United States made it legal for them to do propaganda against us. And so much of what we're hearing isn't real. So if you go to another country and you hear news, it's going to be different than what you hear here. Now, you got to be careful. Just because you're in another country does not mean that's real either, because they could be doing propaganda. And so it's just really important that you work hard to look for the places that you trust as far as facts go. Now, I don't think that, I'll listen to certain media outlets that I trust their facts, but I don't necessarily trust how they're putting the dots together.
Right.
I know that they have, because they really try to be honest, but the way they connect the dots, I think, is completely in left field. So I won't go with their paradigms, but I'll go with their facts. And then I'll put my own paradigms and connect the dots myself. But that's something that I work hard to do. But, the average everyday person, do they have the time to do that? I don't know. It's hard.
No, I think, since I'm delving into some of these issues, I think it's almost impossible for a person who doesn't have some time. I mean, you and I are doing this professionally, so we have time to do some research. But even so, we run up against that problem that you mentioned.
Yeah, we run up against ourselves, and we're in the field.
But in terms of your opinion, don't you feel like the United States government and commercial media, or at least conventional commercial media, seem to be failing in respect of freedom of the press? I mean, how would Edward R. Murrow or Walter Cronkite think of these kinds of changes?
Well, I can tell you what Walter Cronkite, you asked me that question. You said you were going to ask me this question. So I went and I looked and see, before he died, he started seeing all this stuff. And so he had some pretty strong opinions on what, even at the time that he was working, he was viewed as the most honest man in television journalism. The United States, the citizens of this country really, really respected him. And 90% of people got their news from television at the time. And he had some interesting quotes, and he was pretty disappointed in where he was seeing this country go with the media. And he saw that it was being very watered down. And one quote that he said that I thought was pretty interesting was, "We've always known you can gain circulation or viewers by cheapening the product, and now you're finding bad driving out the good." So basically, they knew they could grow an audience, and that's where business takes over. We can grow an audience by watering this down, making it more entertainment-oriented, and not spend the money on hard news, because the average person doesn't care anyways. And that's what is killing us.
Yeah, it is really, it's sad. I mean, I grew up with my father was an attorney. He was in civil rights and did a lot of pro bono. He was very concerned about both things that were, like the Vietnam War or the problem of segregation. All these things were brought to my attention when I was very young. And when this stuff started to happen, particularly in the Bush administration, and particularly with the torture was the first thing, I went into shock myself.
Well, the torture, they did that in other countries so that they could still follow the law. I mean, that's the sad part, is they figured out ways to be able to torture people legally and still follow the Constitution.
Well, they figured out ways of saying that, but I think you and I would both agree that we're dealing with sacred issues like related to the Eighth Amendment, but also just related to human conscience.
Well, the
Geneva
spirit
conventions,
Oh,
the treaties that
absolutely.
we signed, all these things that show that it isn't neither constitutional nor legal.
Well, to torture and abuse people and hold them in captivity for years without a trial, where we can't prove one way or the other whether they're innocent or guilty. I mean, if we have innocent people that are being tortured and held without a trial, that's evil. It's evil.
Well, the problem is you can never know if a person's innocent, actually.
I agree.
Except
I
through
agree.
legal methods, right? And that's certainly
Well, even
limited.
legal methods isn't
It's not
always-
perfect. It's not a perfect system, but to torture people to find out if they're guilty, you see, some of this enhanced interrogation techniques were used by communist Chinese during the Korean War, and they were meant to do one thing: they were meant to get people to confess to things that they didn't do. And
Well, yeah,
so
when
that
you
makes
confess, I just want it to stop. Fine, I did it. Whatever
Yeah.
you're accusing me of, I don't even know what it is. I don't care. I did it. Leave me alone.
Right, exactly. And so doesn't that make you suspicious as to why in such a gigantic issue as terrorism that they would take these people and torture them to get information, thereby kind of assuring they're going to get a lot of false confessions, which builds the case for terrorism being such a terrible thing.
Well, and that's where you get into conspiracy theories and why are they doing this and why aren't they smart enough to realize that their methods aren't working? And then you go back to, well, I think they are probably smart enough.
And they are working. They are working.
Two things.
Yeah.
They're either not smart enough to know that their methods don't work and they're idiots, which we don't think they are, or they are smart enough, they know their methods don't work, and they have another agenda. And that's the scary part. If I want to think more highly of them, I'm going to think that they're smart enough to know that those methods don't work, and they have another agenda. And then that agenda is what's scary.
Well, this kind of negative disruption has basically infiltrated all levels of our society. We're going to take a break now, and we'll be back in just a minute.
New Galaxy Enterprises is a media company specializing in wide-ranging content like novels, nonfiction books, screenplays, commercial advertising, web content, etc. One of our most esteemed providers is illustrator Robert W. Zalo. I work on all my most important projects like book covers, logos, web design elements with Robert. As an illustrator, he worked on the Ignatz-nominated comic book, The Expert's Guide to Killing Things That Go Bump in the Night. His skills encompass advertising, magazine illustrations, gaming, comic books, TV production, and scenic painting. His clients include Comcast, Adelphia, Haven Talent, ForceWorks, High Octane Theater, Star Creative Advertising. If you wish to contact Robert, go to JohnnyBlueStar.com and let me know. That's JohnnyBlueStar.com. For artist illustrator Robert Zalo, an essential component of all the work we do. Maybe he can help you too. Here's one of those strange songs from decades past that will haunt us for decades to come. Here's Misty from singer Patricia Welch's Great Entertainment 46-song 3-CD set entitled Cocktails, Dinner, and Dessert with Patricia. This is the kind of disruption and confusion we all need for once in a while, maybe forever.
Look at me. I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree. feel like I'm clinging to a cloud. I can't understand. I get misty just holding your hand. Walk my way, and 1,000 violins begin to play. Or it might be the sound of your hello, that music I hear. I get misty the moment you're near. You can say that you're leading me on, but it's just what I want you to do. Don't you notice how hopelessly I'm lost? That's why I'm following you. On my own, would I wander through this wonderland alone, never knowing my right foot from my left, my hat from my glove? I'm too misty and too much in love.
That was beautiful, but now back with Sarah Westall and the all-too-real world we need to contend with. Speaking of those in government who are determined to dismantle our right to privacy. Sarah, don't you think that there's a certain element here of disruptive technology which is new, which is basically something like surveillance technology, which has been worked on to a great degree through the government? So aren't we involved with a kind of disruptive technology here, because people no longer can feel secure in their privacy when they're speaking on a phone or writing an email or browsing on the internet or doing social media?
Well, I think it's a shame that we don't feel secure. The problem is that we don't know who the bad guys are, right? And who can really watch us and who's conducting the surveillance. We'd like to think that our government are all the good guys, but that's why Thomas Jefferson and all of our founding fathers were so against this kind of behaviors, because the government the government needs to serve us, and we, not the other way around. And when you're getting mass surveillance like this, the tide is turning. Who's serving who and what's going on? And we're no longer leading the government. The government's leading us and taking charge of everything. And the power's in the government, not in the people. And that's where the problem lies. And yeah, are we less safe maybe if the government doesn't have surveillance everywhere? Maybe. But that's the price you pay for freedom, right? I mean, that's what we have to get down to. And the problem might not be right now. Maybe we say, okay, there is quite a bit of good people yet in government, and we're not going to be, if they have mass surveillance, we're going to be okay. But as soon as you get a mob of people who are in charge, who are bad guys, who infiltrate parts of the government, who have that power, now we're really in trouble. And that's why the laws are in place, to protect you against that situation. Because you don't know when the government can turn. It's happened through history over and over and over again. If it's happened in history over and over again, it can happen here. And that's what we're guarding ourselves against.
Well, the founding fathers, included the Second Amendment in the Constitution, and that amendment wasn't specifically developed for protecting individual citizens, but for having state militias to protect themselves from an overweening national government, from a King George type of thing that might happen to them again.
Well, exactly. And
So-
that, that's the whole point, is that it can happen again. It will happen again. It happens again. It's history. It keeps repeating itself.
We're going to go to a break now, and we'll be back on the second hour of Threshold Radio.